All right, so we're talking about surveillance capitalism now. And I mean, you could easily contextualize this as a data ethics problem. But I think it's better to think of it specifically in the context of how algorithms are shaping society, and specifically think of it as an issue when it comes to persuasion. And hopefully I'll be able to explain that in just a bit here. Okay, so we're going to use our familiar 6-question framework to address this problem. So first, let's get a description of this problem. So this term was, I think, first used, but at least popularized, by a researcher named Shoshana Zuboff out of Harvard. And she wrote this famous book, The Age of Surveillance Capitalism. So, I mean, there's many ways to describe it. It's focused on for-profit companies and how they use algorithms to understand us very deeply, the patterns and habits that we have that we hold sometimes subconsciously. Okay, so I know that surveillance is not a new term, obviously. We're always worried about surveillance. In fact, you can make the case that liberal societies, one of the main reasons they even exist as liberal societies is to prevent surveillance, specifically by the government. But here we're concerned more with business than with government. I'll talk about an exception to that in a second. We are concerned more directly with manipulation rather than coercion, again, but I'll throughout, these will all be like themes. I'll explain myself more as this presentation goes on. We're more concerned with profit motive specifically than just sheer power and control. And we're more concerned with patterns and habits rather than just with information about individuals. Now, the first thing I'll say is there's plenty of overlap, okay? So just because you're focused on business doesn't mean you don't care about government at all. There's lots of ways where those things come together. An example, famous example in the run-up to the 2016 U.S. presidential election, the Trump campaign, people associated with it were working at this place or founded this place called Cambridge Analytica, which is just, a normal-sounding analytics firm. But they were specifically getting data from Facebook in order to figure out who to push these ads to. And so, you can't keep any of these things strictly separate. I'm just saying, like, we're more directly concerned with business, we're more directly concerned with profit than with the traditional government surveillance, making its citizens do things they don't want to do. I have another video about that, digital privacy. This is a bit different. Okay, what's familiar about this problem? So, for decades, businesses have been desperate to know as much as they can about their customers, okay? That wasn't always true, even of capitalism. So early capitalism, early 20th century, you have different conceptions, different dominating paradigms, such as like the production concept or selling concept, where there's a sense that if we just mass produce something and make this thing cheap enough, then people are just going to flock to it and buy it just because it's cheap. So, there's some truth to that, but like the modern capitalist for-profit business kind of came together later than that. I'm not a business historian myself, but probably something like after World War II, people were coming back from the war and, the businesses became more recognizably like they are today. So, in particular, businesses were realizing that it's not just that we want to make a bunch of stuff and then sell it, because we first have to figure out like what kind of stuff we should make that people want to buy. So to do that, we have to know our customers. And so there's decades and decades of all this kind of research and all these attempts, focus groups and surveys and intuition even, like all these ways to try to figure out, what people want. They want to know their customers, the needs and wants of their customers. And there's another aspect to this too, is intelligent businesses know that it's not just your customers, but also your employees, right? So at a certain point in time when jobs were, most jobs were purely physical labor, if you have two people, working on the railroad, hammering spikes, their personalities aren't like super huge deals. Maybe they don't like each other. Maybe one guy's a jerk or something like that. But they just do their job, right? Well, in the modern business organization, if you have a team that's working together to achieve some objective and one of the people is a jerk, that messes up the entire team. It's toxic, right? So businesses are just not only understanding that it's really important to get to know our customers, but they also understand it's really important to know who we're going to hire, right? To find the right people to hire, not just a body who's going to come in and do something, but we want them to be able to fit with the team, with our vision, with what we have going on. So we have had decades and decades of businesses thinking like this. All right, so what's an update here? Well, one update is just because of the scale of digital technology. So all this information about potential customers, about potential employees, is now available. So it's only been a couple decades. People have started carrying supercomputers around in their pockets, right? Phones. And we all have them. Like they've figured out how to give them to everybody. Everybody has one. There's not just like some elite status symbol. Everybody has a phone. And so these phones, one thing they do is they store tons and tons and tons and tons of data automatically without you asking it to store the data, and it's just stored there forever. So all like this long-term, decades-old desire of businesses to have information about individuals is suddenly coming to fruition. Oh, we have it now. I mean, you have to like have analytics people to like make sense of it because it's just like a big blah, but it's out there, right? It's a solvable problem to get to know your customers through their data and get to know your potential employees. But there's an important twist too, and this is more in line with what Zuboff is describing. So it's not just that we're surveilling and getting data about individuals, although that's part of it, but I think the more significant part of it is that it's algorithms that are getting to know not just our data, but our actual patterns and habits, what we do, how we behave, when we click on this, what colors make us, spend a little more time on this. Like all these things that really are at the subconscious level. Like I can't tell you any of those things about myself, or very many, right? I don't but an algorithm knows, my patterns and habits better than I do, right? What makes me tick? So this is a bit different. It's not just like my name and addresses out there. It's like these algorithms know like how I work, right? That's new, and I think that that's a big piece of the surveillance capitalism concern. All right, what ethical values are we talking about? Well, surveillance gives a great temptation to the entity that's doing the surveillance to engage in coercion or manipulation. So both of those things are the direct enemies of autonomy. Autonomy is, we choose ourselves what to do, where to go, what values to have, our goals, projects, how we're going to live life, our freedom, right? So the more manipulation there is, the more coercion there is, the less autonomy there is. So they're in direct tension, right? So as coercion or manipulation go up, autonomy goes down. Okay, so coercion is bad, but one thing that is better than manipulation is at least I can tell when it's happening, right? There's no mystery. If I'm being forced to do something against my will, there's not a mystery about what the badness that's happening. Manipulation is different, and this gets into deeper into why we're talking about companies and the profit motive, because it's not as if companies are coercing me to buy something against my will. That's not how capitalism works, right? No one's forcing you to buy something that you don't want to buy. However, it could easily be true that you want to buy it. You want it because they want you to want it. That is manipulation. And manipulation is very difficult to detect. And increasingly, it's easier and easier to do. All right, so what are we going to do about this? Well, I think first of all, this gives us a chance to revisit an excuse, a privacy excuse that we sometimes hear, which is that people say, well, I don't need privacy if I'm not doing anything wrong, right? The only reason you need privacy if you're doing something that is that's illegal, or that you don't want people to find out about. I think that is not a good line of reasoning. I mean, I understand it's tempting, but it's not a good line of reasoning for several reasons. This shows us another really important reason. Because even if you're not doing anything bad, right? Even if you're going on the pet store website to buy some food for your pet, right? There's things about the website and the algorithm and your click rate and all these sorts of things that some algorithm could easily be learning about your patterns and habits, okay? You're not doing anything wrong, but it's getting to know you, and therefore that is enabling the potential for future manipulation, okay? So, I really strongly encourage you to banish the idea that privacy is only for lawbreakers or something. Privacy is important for everyone. Now, I'm not trying to say that everything a business does is bad and harmful, right? There's some legitimate pockets all over the place about what's happening, but the people that are worried about it, there's not very many of us. The people that are excited about it, there's a lot of them. So I'm overemphasizing the worry part because I'm like part of a very small band of people that are worried. Everyone else thinks that this is going to be great, whereas us ethicists are the ones who are concerned. So I'm just presenting this as a problem. I realize that there's going to be aspects that go, they give you what you want, right? But I do think this accentuates the importance of privacy laws. Okay, so as I've said in another video in digital privacy in this series, privacy in the digital age is so complicated. I don't think we should assume that individuals are able to take care of their own privacy. It's just not a realistic assumption. There are maybe some privacy experts, the elite of the elite of the elite, that are able to, figure out how to keep private in this digital age. There's not very many of us. We should not put the burden on individuals. We also shouldn't assume that businesses are going to do it. Now, some businesses are going to cultivate privacy as a trust kind of thing. That's cool. I encourage that. But this is one of Zuboff's big points. Asking a for-profit company to give us more privacy in the age of surveillance capitalism is a lot of times, self-defeating. That's the point. We don't want you to have privacy because that would prevent us from getting to know you. So I think the answer in the end is just going to be privacy laws. We're going to need strong ones, we're going to need robust ones, we're going to need detailed ones, and we're going to need enforceable ones, and we're going to need people that are willing to enforce them. I think that is our best hope.